please. And now I give the floor to Yousef Azizi Banitorof, who is an Arabian Awazi writer, is a journalist, co-founder of the Arabian Writers Union. And member and first secretary of the Center for Combat Racism and Anti-Racism. You can have a floor. Thank you.
عنوان سخنرانی من هست ملیت‌های غیر فارس و فرایند
I want to greet and welcome all the friends and the people who are present here today and the organizers of this event. Iran consists of 6 major nations: Persians, Turks, Kurds, Arabs, Baluchis, and Turkmens. Now, the national issue is a modern phenomenon which arose during the last century from new economic and social media. Furthermore, the constitutional revolution can be said to be the starting point of the process of democratization in Iran. And in fact, the idea of Iranian nation was a fallacy born from this revolution, which is in contrast with a more realistic and objective notion of Iranian nations. The Turks of Azerbaijan, however, played a more effective role in the constitutional revolution than other nations of Iran. The semi-democratic environment of Iran in the 4th decade of the 20th century created the circumstances which allowed the Turks and the Kurds to gain autonomy in the framework of Iran as a country. This autonomy lasted only for about a year until they were brutally repressed by the Shah. On the other hand, all the nation of Iran took part in the 1979 revolution, which finally put an end to monarchy in Iran. Non-Persian people of Iran took advantage of the democratic atmosphere after the revolution to attain some of their national rights. However, these attempts were bloodily suppressed in a massacre by the new government. They began in June 1979 with the Arabs, who were followed by the Kurds and the Turkmens on the summer of the same year. Finally, the Turks were silenced in 1980. As a matter of fact, the non-Persian people experienced an unprecedented and useful period for the advancement of national awareness during the control of the reformists over the government. Unfortunately, at the end of President Khatami's term, the gruesome oppression of Iranian nations continued and dramatically increased during the presidency of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. And for instance, the Awazi region, formerly known as Khuzestan or Arabistan, was the scene of unrest for 2 to 3 years. During these years, among Awazi Arabs, 177 individuals were executed in 2006, along with 28 more in 2007. In 2009, the province had the highest number of executions after the province of Tehran. And this was recorded also in the province of Sistan and Baluchistan in 2008. Moreover, in April 2005, the Arab people of Awaz, protesting peacefully, faced the wrath of the Iranian police and security forces. And these clashes led to a sweeping uprising in most of the cities in the province. As a result of this uprising, tens of people were murdered and hundreds more were injured and jailed. In July 2005, the Kurds rose in protest to the murder of Shawani Kaderi and also suffered grave casualties among the dead and imprisoned. In May 2007, an insult to the Turks of Azerbaijan in one of the government-run newspapers was the spark that blazed Tehran and northwestern provinces of Iran in protests and demonstrations. Again, several individuals were murdered, while many more were detained. The unrest in Baluchistan and among the Turkmens was met with the same brutality. I do not believe that everything started in Tehran, and I do not believe it necessary to point the manner in which the current democratization movement was formed. But it is to be noted that the plans presented by two of the presidential candidates in June 2009 demonstrated the reformist view of a national issue. However, these plans were introduced before the presidential elections and reflected the influence of the modern non-Persian nations discourse. Indeed, Mehdi Karoubi's plans were more detailed about the issue than those of Mir Hossein Mousavi, but the latter has attempted to redeem this shortcoming in the past few months. And the statements made by him and his wife about the issue are to be welcomed. Mousavi's position on the right of Iranian nations seems to sway and are far from what most non-Persian national activists and groups demand. During its first year in existence, three attitudes toward the Green movement can be observed among non-Persian nations. Some joined the movement and defended its cause, others distanced themselves from it, and the rest were indifferent. In my opinion, the majority belonged to the second group as a result of a historical lack of trust that has been aggravated by recent events and the overwhelming presence of security forces in the regions inhabited by non-Persian nations. This group of people believe that countrywide parties centered in Tehran have shown indifference towards the suppression of non-Persian nations during the last few years, and therefore they insist to distance from the current movement as it is mainly active in central Iran. And it is worthy of note that this view has somewhat changed in the past few months as a result of various discussions and criticisms among this group. Recently, eminent figures of the Green movement and other countrywide parties, whether inside or outside of Iran, directed unprecedented criticism towards the government for the execution of 4 Kurdish Iranians, which caused widespread strikes among the Kurds. Although other Iranian nations still hold on to their previous skepticism, this promising act could lead to a new coordinated cooperation between central and peripheral movements. Above all, the Baluchis have encountered the most severe suppression where the Arabs face annihilation. These circumstances created by state racism, assimilation and Farsi policies, which include the denial of basic linguistic and cultural rights, confiscation of Arab farmers' lands, high unemployment rates, the great increase in the number of slums, and an extraordinary effort by the government to alter the demography of the region, have all aligned themselves with demands stated in Abtahi letter of 2005. These demands would result in placing the Arabs in the province of Khuzestan in minority and causing their extinction. I do not argue the said letter's legitimacy. However, the reality of the situation stresses its contents. It's a reality that in a 10-year period between 1996 and 2006, 833,000 non-Arab emigrants were brought to the city of Awaz in a well-organized manner.